Hello friends, I'm Paul Estabrooks. Last week on this video series I told you the story of a mission trip to Ukraine with my wife Diane on the first anniversary of independence in that country. A great mission trip. And after we returned from that trip, our ministry said, we would like you to try a test for us with your next tour group. We would like to try and deliver some Bibles to China from Russia, which was now, of course, past the era of the Soviet Union. It collapsed at the end of 1991, and this trip was going to take place in the summer of 1993. So that was the plan, and we thought, wow, what a great idea. So we were to go to the city of Khabarovsk on the east coast, far east of Russia, pick up 1,000 Chinese Bibles, and then decide on which route we would take to go into the country. So we started making a plan, and we found that Alaska Airlines flew from Seattle to Khabarovsk, but they made a stop on the way at a city called Magadan. And we decided, whoa, what a neat opportunity. Magadan was notorious. It was a prison camp. It was established in 1924 by Stalin and essentially built by prisoners in the Gulag. And so it was, but it became an infamous place because many of the Christians that we knew who were put in prison were sent way out to Magadan. Magadan was unique because it had a harbor. That means the ships could come in with the prisoners, and there was no way that they could escape. The wooded areas within hundreds and hundreds of miles of there were unpassable and just, very, very problematic. So they had no worries about a prisoner ever escaping from Magadan except by sea on a ship, which might be the only possibility. The nearest place to swim to would be 40 miles away. So it was considered a safe place for the ultimate Gulag. Then we would go from Khabarovsk over to Irkutsk, we decided, because we had always been intrigued by the Trans-Siberian train. And at one point, the family, along with the Madisons, our dear Canadian friends, we had decided to go from Beijing to Moscow on the entire length of the Trans-Siberian train trip, day and night. I think it was 5 days and 5 nights or more. 7 days. I think it was a full week to do that. But we didn't have time for that. And so we decided, let's plan to go to Irkutsk. It's just a central Siberian city, and get on the train there and do the 3 days and 3 nights around, all the way around Mongolia, down into the northeast of China and down to Beijing. So that was the plan. And so we set off. We had 24 wonderful people. One of them was a first-time traveler with us in our mission trip tour group. We always called it a mission trip / tour group event. And his name was Bob, and he was from Pennsylvania. Bob came from a church that was a real praying church, and also they understood the challenges of China and even the far east of Russia, which was like totally different people from the westernized part of the Soviet Union. And so they set up a prayer chain of people who would pray for our team, this group, and especially Bob, for the entire 3 weeks that we were going to be on this trip. They had it set up day and night. Somebody at every minute of a day or night was praying for us as we travel. I think that's the only time I've known of that kind of prayer activity. And it was significant because we definitely needed it. So we ran into all kinds of roadblocks, and I only have time to tell you of a few. But it was a significant trip. So we meet in Seattle, and we are taking a very early morning Alaska Airlines flight from Seattle to Magadan. And we would stay there for a few days and then go onward to Khabarovsk. So we get to the airport. Now, I must tell you that people who travel with me were people who love to travel and love to give away gifts. They would take extra clothing, they would take books, they would take Bibles and tracts and Christian literature, and I mean, just, I cannot name you all the kinds of things that people took, but they would go to the full extent of what they were allowed. And of course, with international travel, you were usually allowed 2 suitcases that could be as much as 70 pounds each without getting socked for overweight. And so that's what everybody had. We all had 2 check-in suitcases besides our great big shoulder bag, and that was a carry-on. And then we would have the 2 heavy ones, big ones. We check in at Alaska Airlines only to find out that Alaska Airlines categorized Seattle to Magadan as a domestic flight. I cannot for the life of me even yet figure out how that could have happened, but that was the case. And so the check-in people said, I'm sorry, but you've got to pay overweight for all this extra weight you have. This is a domestic flight. Well, we were talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars for overweight. Now, this is right at the top of our trip, right off the beginning. Well, praise the Lord, I knew one of the guys who worked at Alaska Airlines. And I said to the team, you be praying, and I'm going to go see. Now, this is 7:30 in the morning. I mean, who's in the office that has an office job at 7:30 in the morning? But I phoned my friend, and would you believe he was there? He was in his office at 7:30 that morning. And he said, oh, Paul, we understand this whole thing, and it's a misunderstanding, and I have the authority to clear you. And the next thing we knew, we were all cleared through, and we had no overweight charges. And we were on this fantastic Alaska Airlines flight up through past Alaska and across the top of the world and down the east coast of the Soviet Union to the city of Magadan. And we arrived there safely. It was a notorious place, and we didn't have great expectations, but we shouldn't have had either. The hotel was really dumpy. There was no hot water in the whole place. And even though this was summer, this was fairly north. Magadan is on the same latitude as Yellowknife of the Northwest Territories. So the challenges that we had with hotel was just amazing. Then we had a problem with our guides. The main guide who Intourist gave us, and by the way, all the years of the Soviet Union, if you traveled as a tourist in the country, you had to go through an organization, a government organization there called Intourist. And they made all your arrangements. You had to have them make all the arrangements for you for the time you were in their country. Well, Intourist was still operating in 1993. And so they were to have made in our agreement with them of going to Magadan, Khabarovsk, and then over to Irkutsk. They were to take care of all of that. So when we arrive, we have an Intourist tour guide. She's a tour guide in Magadan. So you know that it's not a great tourist stop. This gulag city. And she had hired she didn't speak any English. So she hired a young lady to be her English translator. And her name was Tanya, same name as our older daughter. And so we had Larissa, the main guide, and Tanya taking care of us. Well, kind of taking care of us. They really didn't do an awful lot. That they organized a half-day city tour and basically left us on our own, which was fine because we were very seasoned travelers and we had our own plans and interests anyway. Magadan I mentioned was built in 24 by Stalin as a gulag, only by prisoners. And the whole early years of this city was strictly political and religious prisoners in this area. Well, the interesting challenge was that now things had changed significantly. There were a lot of people in the city, and the new airport that had been built there was built 30 miles outside the city for some reason. I guess it was the only clearing in this forested area that they could get, and it's a little bit hilly as well. So they had to build a road from the airport to the city of Magadan. This was built also by prisoners, and prisoners were pressured so hard that many of them died as they worked on this chain gang building this road, and they just pushed their bodies under the dirt and built the road right over top of them. It's estimated that 7,500 bodies of prisoners are under that 30-mile stretch of road from the airport to the city. And nobody knows how many prisoners died in Magadan over the years, but it's in the hundreds of thousands of prisoners that died in that place because it was so inhospitable, especially, of course, in the wintertime. So Magadan didn't have a lot to offer us, but we wanted to see this place where we knew so many prisoners had been kept. And we were quite surprised, though, at some of the opportunities. So one of the things we took in our suitcases was material for children. I mentioned last week that we always loved going to children's hospitals. These are usually kids with cancer or some serious disease. And we would take toys, we would take books, we would take bracelets with little colored beads on it of the wordless book to share the gospel. And they would get these bracelets. And so in Magadan, again, we go to a children's hospital. And we had a wonderful time. One of our team could speak Russian. And so we were able to communicate there. And we had a great opportunity. Now that night, in the evening, we found out that there was a church meeting in town. There was no church other than the official Russian Orthodox Church, a big, beautiful cupola building. But this church was a Protestant church that met on the third floor over top of the casino in town. And they met in the evening, so we were able to go. They allowed us to go, and the 24 of us went to this service, and it was a young people service, a youth service. There were 400 Christian young people jammed into this place. Now, this is the former Soviet Union, a country of atheism, official atheism. And by 1993, in the town of Magadan, there were at least 400 Christian young people. And they put on a music program that was second to none. The pastor had 4 daughters, and they were all musical, and they all performed, and they all led in different things. They sang at the top of their lungs, this whole group. They danced on the spot. You know, you just had heads bobbing up and down. And they had just a great time. And we had so much fun watching them. And because later that pastor is going to enter the story. And so we went there. The next day, after going to that church and meeting the pastor and his daughters and some of the other young people, we were on our way to Khabarovsk. So we're in the bus now, leaving the wretched hotel that we stayed in, and we're on our way to the airport. And Larissa turns to me and says, can you give me your 24 tickets for this flight on Alaska Airlines? And I said, Larissa, you are totally mistaken. Our time in this country is looked after by in-tourists. We only got our own tickets to Magadan. We don't have tickets to Khabarovsk. And she said, oh, no. In-tourist isn't doing that anymore. You should have your own tickets. And I said, but we don't. And here I am now with a group of 24 people heading to an airport, and there's a total misunderstanding. It turned out that Larissa was totally wrong, but that wasn't fixed until much later. She was totally out of place. She was supposed to have had those tickets. But we get to the airport now, we've got no tickets. Now, fortunately, we were like 2 hours ahead of time. And so we told the airline people that we would be, actually I think it was Aeroflot we were flying on this leg of the journey. And we told them that we would be coming. We were booked. We had a registered booking, but no ticket. And so I got out my American Express card, and they said, yeah, we'll accept it. And they wrote out 24 tickets. Now, those were the days when you had paper airplane tickets, and they had to be written out by hand. And we stood there twiddling our thumbs, waiting. It was getting later and later, and they're writing out 24 airplane tickets for my group. It was incredible. And about 20 minutes before flight time, we go running off with our heavy bags. We still had heavy bags. We left a lot of stuff there, but these bags were heavy. We head off with our heavy bags to check in. And everybody else had checked in already, and there was a half a plane full of standby passengers because the flight was way overbooked. And there were many people that wanted to get on that flight. So we're checking in. And the lady who was checking us in, I should have realized was a full-fledged Soviet apparatchik. She had a red armband on her arm, which she was still wearing. We didn't see these anywhere else in the country by 1993, but she was wearing hers, and I should have realized, here's a hardliner all the way. And she checked us in, and she said, half of you, 12 of you, have bags that are overweight, and you must pay for them. I said, fine, we've done this before on previous trips. We would like to pay. And she says, this will be X number of $100 US. And I said, no. Every trip I've been on in the Soviet Union and in this country have been paid by rubles, and I will pay for the overweight bags with rubles. And she said, no, you will pay with US dollars. I should have known at that point that it was fruitless to go any further, but I kept kind of negotiating with her, but to the point where she became very frustrated. And she said, all right, if you want to be like that. And she looked across the room, and there were 12 people sitting over there who were our standby passengers, and she said, you're on. And all 12 of these people go rushing through security to get onto the plane. And she said, so the 12 of you who have tickets and your baggage is okay, then you're good to go. Well, I was one of the ones that had overweight baggage, so I was one of the 12 that wouldn't go. Now, fortunately, my buddy Jim Cunningham had come with me on the trip. Now, we've been friends since we were young teenagers. Now we teach together, and we've been friends for at least 65 years. And this is way back in 1993. And Jim said to me, hey, I've got a boarding pass. You take it and go, and I'll take yours and stay here with the half of the group. I was really hesitant to do that, but what could I do? So, and we were going to Khabarovsk to pick up 1,000 Chinese Bibles to take for the rest of our trip.